Hi again, Dr. Marianne Cintron, and I'm here with tip 3 of how to unlock your child's genius. So now I use the letter N, that stands for neuroscience. Dyslexia is neurological in origin, so remember the brain can be retrained. We weren't born with a reading brain like we were to see and hear. Reading is a man-made thing. So God gave us the brain parts that'll work together to help us read. So dyslexia is really the superpower of the genius. So the dyslexic child needs a multisensory approach to reading. Let me ask you a question. How do you learn best? Do you need to see something in patterns or shapes or colors to understand it? Or do you need to listen? Do you need to have someone talk so that you really understand it? Maybe listen to a book on tape? Do you need to have hands-on? You know, sometimes I wouldn't learn it until I actually did it. I could read and read and read, but until you hands-on helps you learn it. And then how many of you ever shared a problem with a friend and you solved your own problem just by speaking? So we call these the different modalities: kinesthetic, visual, auditory, and well, even speaking. So these are the multisensory techniques that help a child learn. And while this helps all children, because you're working to a child's strength and to their weakness, it definitely needs to be used with a dyslexic child. So what we do is help children with writing. One of the indicators of dyslexia is how they write. Typically, dyslexic children will add or omit letters and syllables, and they won't capitalize their sentences, they won't punctuate their sentences. And then some kids will even have what we call dysgraphia. That's a component often tied to dyslexia where you can't read their writing. And often I've had to have kids read to me what they wrote because I couldn't read it, and sometimes they can't even read their own writing. So with Orton Gillingham, we actually help these kids with some of their script and how to write letters. So the brain scans and the MRIs show that kids with dyslexia are reading from the left side of the brain. I'm so sorry. Kids with dyslexia, the non-dyslexic kids are reading from the left side of the brain. So the dyslexic child is stronger in the right side of the brain. But what's happening is the right angular gyrus wants to send the words over incorrectly. It'll want to send calp instead of clap, farm instead of from. And so it'll want to send house instead of igloo. It'll just send the wrong words. And it also wants to bypass, it wants to go over the corpus callosum, which we call the lazy referee. So what we do in my reading program, step-by-step reading, is we use an app I developed. It's called Dunking Dyslexia. We send music in the left ear, which crosses over to the right angular gyrus and gives it a job it likes to do, because we know music is in the right side of the brain. And the app has spelling exercises in the right ear that cross to the left side of the brain, giving it the strength like Pilates of the brain. And also by sending the music and the spelling exercises together in a dichotic method of learning, we're bypassing the corpus callosum. So the auditory processing is improved. And this is based on the research of Dr. Roger Sperry. Imagine this, in the 1960s, Dr. Sperry worked with seizure patients, and he severed their corpus callosum, and he worked at the left and the right sides of the brain independently. And the seizures stopped, and the people were functioning. And he said that if educators could take this information into the classroom, we could help kids that had word blindedness, which is what dyslexia was called in the early 1960s. So we can't split the brains of kids, but we can send information in a dichotic method meaning two different inputs at one time. And I want to end with this. Dr. Roger Sperry won a Nobel Prize for his split brain theory in the 1980s. 20 years later, it caught up with him and he won a Nobel Prize. So that's tip number 3. Look at the neuroscience of dyslexia, and that's how we're going to help your child unlock the genius, is dealing with the brain and using our app. Stay tuned for tip number 4. Bye-bye now. Thanks for tuning in.